Hi, Ms. Burkle. This is my Titanic informative video speech. This is my audience, right here, and this is my mom, also. Oh. The Titanic is arguably the world's most famous shipwreck. It was built in Belfast, UK, and was commissioned by the White Star Line. Then the world's largest and most luxurious ocean liner, she was also considered unsinkable. She was 270 meters long, weighed 4,600 tons, and had a double bottom, designed to prevent water from entering the ship and spreading, as well as sealed compartments to stop the water from spreading. What then could have sunk such a safe and massive ship? Now here, you'll see the Titanic at port, at the bottom of the ocean, and on its way there, to the bottom of the ocean. Now if you look closer here, you can see there's a whole bunch of diagrams showing small parts of the ship filling with water, and then the part of the ship that actually filled with water, which was way too many for it to take. An iceberg, which as you can see is mostly below the water line, and the ship's double bottom. If you can look really closely here, you'll see there's a space, and that's actually the double bottom of the ship. And here's one of the doors that would have closed when the water entered. The Titanic set sail from Europe in 1912 on her maiden voyage to the United States. It was to carry thousands of souls to New York via the North Atlantic. To better understand the Titanic disaster, one must better understand icebergs. Around the end of winter, glaciers and ice sheets close to the poles of the Atlantic began to shed ice in massive quantities. These fragments fell into the sea. They are then picked up by ocean currents. These currents bring them down into the North Atlantic and into the path of ships crossing the ocean. Icebergs can be massive, sometimes resembling skyscrapers in the water. They sit low and can extend horizontally outwards to great distances. They can easily bring down a ship that has crashed into it. Because at speeds of up to 30 knots, steel can sometimes become like tinfoil. This knowledge was not new to Titanic's crew, and lookouts were always posted high in the shelter called a crow's nest to look out for icebergs. Also, iceberg warnings were sent between ships via wireless telegraph. Why then did the ship not know about these icebergs? Or notice anything? The ship needed hundreds of meters, if not a good mile or two, to make a turn at 30 knots to avoid collision. Second, the ship should not have been moving so fast that night. An iceberg warning had been issued by another ship in the area, and the Titanic should have slowed. She did not. The Titanic wanted to make an example of the ship and pressed on at full speed. A warning had even been sent by a ship ahead of the Titanic, claiming she was entirely surrounded by ice at the time. The Titanic's operator was, however, so busy that he did not notice the message was an iceberg warning due to the cordial nature of the operator's message. That night, lookouts were posted in the Shivering Gold. The ship cruised through the ocean at 30 knots, powered by a powerful combination of steam turbine and steam piston engines, which together delivered 4,600 horsepower, about that of an airliner engine. The parties are going out all over the ship and the crew is at work. Suddenly a loud clanging cuts through the night on deck. "Iceberg dead ahead," cries the lookout. The captain heard and immediately took action, ordering the ship to turn left and engines to reverse. About a minute later, the ship swung aside the iceberg, and then a terrible grinding noise was heard. The ship had collided with the iceberg, and in doing so ruptured 6 watertight compartments alongside her hull's right side. According to her design, this was fatal, and she began to sink. As a side note, in an ironic twist of fate, if the Titanic had struck the iceberg head-on, it is thought she would have survived. Also, double bottoms are used in commercial ships today. Why then, if it didn't work on the Titanic? That's simple. The Titanic had a double bottom, but it did not have a bottom on a double side, which was actually part of the design and never incorporated due to cost constraints. Had it had this, it would have survived an impact. It was negligence, the thinking of lawmen, and occasionally bad luck that set the Titanic on its course of fate. The White Star Line had wanted the ship to be the best in the fleet. She had the biggest, fastest, and most luxurious ship at the time. Her second-class amenities were akin to most first-class on other ships. She had a swimming pool, barbershop, and a racquetball court. The main staircase went through the core of the ship, carved from fine woods and looked over by a natural skylight dome. The ship's safety stemmed from her double bottom and watertight compartments. The amount of lifeboats carried could fit about half the crew, which was, unfortunately, the letter of the law at the time. The compartments in the bottom were thought, and still are thought, to be good ideas, but were overcome by the strength of the seas that night. The Titanic did not run over an iceberg, and thus might have had a single bottom. Also, The watertight compartments were not sealed at the top, which meant that they were in effect useless. Upon impact, the ship's engineer was sent down a lifeboat, the lower deck, to check the damage. He decided the ship could not be saved. Around 1 o'clock, lifeboats began loading. The Carpathia, a full 5 hours steaming away, immediately began working her way towards the ice, towards the sinking ship. The ship was seen off in the distance on the horizon, but despite repeated calls on the telegraph, it disappeared into the night, never to be seen or identified. At first, the evacuation was orderly, as mass skepticism gripped the passengers. How could an unsinkable ship sink? Passengers knelt about the deck and a band played music. Signal flares shot into the sky and amused passengers. But as the ship sank further into the water, it lifted to starboard and forward, and a tail end began to lift upwards. Panic and chaos would then set in. People wholesale dove into the remaining lifeboats. Some flipped over while deploying, and others flipped over in the water while trying to save passengers who were in the water. The band really did play to the end, roughly around midnight, 2 a.m., when the lights went off. The smokestack broke off, crushing everyone in it, everyone below it. Shortly thereafter, the ship, with its stern fully out of the water, broke in half, and the bow slipped below the waves. For a moment, the stern came to rest, upright as normal, then it went vertical as it sank. The water that night was so cold that if it had been fresh water, it would have been ice. At those temperatures, covered in ocean water, drowning was not the primary fear one should have carried. It was the fear of hypothermia. Reports of water say that type of water is like daggers striking your body as you enter. The actual temperature was 28 degrees, and one would die from hypothermia in an hour in water that cold. The Carpathia arrived at 4:10 a.m., 2 hours after the Titanic sank. This doomed most of the passengers and crew, who left in the water well over the time it takes for stage 3 to 7. The Titanic disaster prompted major change in maritime law, took 1,500 lives, and is over 100 years, over 100 years later, is the image of shipwrecks everywhere. It was both a great ship and an example of hubris causing harm. That is my speech. Don't turn it off yet. And we have ovation from our still present audience.